Hi there. Welcome back to the Reel Film Chronicles podcast. As always, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brian.
And in today's exciting episode, we're going to be talking about a little film called Deadstream.
2022, directed by Joseph Winter and Vanessa Winter, starring Joseph Winter himself, Melanie Stone, and a couple other folks I don't recognize. I don't recognize any of these people. But I think the Winters here have directed one of the short segments in the VHS series. I don't know. Have you checked out any of those? They're like a series of short films, like into a compilation.
I have not checked them out, but thank you for mansplaining it to me.
No problem. For everyone else, go check out VHS. Your buddies there, Benson Moorhead, I think also did a segment in one of the VHS series.
There's a couple in the series now, right? Like there's 2 or 3 VHS.
There's that. I want to say 3, if not 4. I think there's a new one like VHS 99 or something coming out. Anyways, they're pretty neat. But Deadstream, yeah, this is a quote unquote found footage movie, and it's basically it's kind of neat. It's a film about a YouTube star, like a live streaming guy who kind of has a fall from grace. He does some possibly offensive things in some of his videos, and he does a lot of like stunt and challenge videos that are so prevalent on YouTube. He kind of gets canceled for a few months, and he comes back with an idea that he's going to live stream himself spending the night in, I think the place is called Death Manor. It's an abandoned, supposedly super haunted location, and he's got to spend the whole night there, and he forces himself to do that. He has a sponsor, and part of that sponsorship is he cannot leave. He has to investigate any weird noises he hears, all that stuff. It was a neat concept. And for a found footage movie, I feel like there's a bit of like negativity inherently built into the found footage genre. And one of the things I liked about this is that it kind of evolves that found footage. I mean, the whole thing kind of started with the Blair Witch back in 99, I think.
Yes.
Right? And now, I mean, video technology has evolved so much. I think on the poster is like an image of like one of these action cameras, like a GoPro. And so you can mount these GoPros, and that's what this guy does. I think his name is Shawn in the movie. And he mounts GoPros near the ceiling, like on the walls, to basically monitor these rooms. And part of the live stream is that it can change cameras for the viewers as if it picks up movement, sort of thing. Did you have any expectations going into this movie before watching it?
Not really, no. You had recommended it to me, and so I sat down to check it out. Honestly, when I hear found footage, I kind of like take a step back and I was like,
Right.
I don't know. Like, there's always a negative. I think there's been a lot of kind of mediocre content, but also for me, part of it is the conceit of the found footage where somebody has to be holding a camera the whole time through experiences where one would normally just like toss the camera aside and run away screaming, and I'm trying to find above and beyond having to make the actual movie good and the narrative in the movie good, trying to, on top of that, have a good reason why these people are still filming these things. It's difficult to achieve. I think Blair Witch did it really well. The Blair Witch Project, the original one. I haven't seen any of the sequels or remakes or whatever. I have no real desire to. They could be the best movies in the world. I'll probably check them out at some point.
They are not. No problem.
The other one that comes to mind, obviously, is the Paranormal Activity series.
That was a huge series. There's like 6 or 7 of those now.
Yeah, one just came out recently. The first one, I will say, as someone who does not believe in the paranormal or ghosts, that first movie freaks me the heck out every time I watch it. Like I go to bed and put the covers over my head for sure after watching that one. The other ones are to varying degrees of quality, and part of the problem is they keep having to justify why all these people have these video cameras on and keep recording during these horrific events going on, right? What was another? I think one of the Halloween movies. It was a Halloween Resurrection. Part of it was like the whole movie wasn't found footage, but part of it was like they were like YouTubers or something.
Yeah, they're going to be filming something in like the Michael's house This Childhood Home, maybe. That's been a while since I've seen that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are other movies, not in the horror genre, but Man Bites Dog, which is a French film. It's actually a part of the Criterion Collection, where there's a documentary film crew going around filming a serial killer. Really, it sounds like a crazy concept, but they pull it off really well. It's a difficult balance to walk, but they do it well. Another one I watched recently, again, horror movie, is Behind the Mask, which again is like it's a documentary film crew following around like a masked killer.
That style of having like the documentary crew sort of like solves that issue. It's just like, why would you continue filming? It's like, well, that's kind of like these people are literally doing that for their job. Like that's what they're there for. It gives a little more credence to it.
And there's an examination in those ones of the interrelationship between journalists and their subjects, and like to what degree is it ethical to keep filming and reporting on something without intervening. There's interesting kind of conversations to be had there. For some reason, most of the found footage stuff I'm thinking of is all like horror films. I don't know if it lends itself to like low budget kind of horror movies. It's easy for a bunch of friends to go out and film a found footage horror film for $20K. Maybe that's why it lends itself to it.
Yeah, I think that's where as well, like the negative connotation, because a lot of horror movies are low budget to begin with, and a found footage one might be even lower budget. And I don't want to say like lower effort, but the quality doesn't seem to be as high. And I think that sort of bleeds into our everyday expectation of what a quote unquote found footage movie is. But there have been some really good ones and some really innovative ones. And speaking of like non-horror ones, I mean, you have something like Cloverfield.
I was going to mention that next. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, that's probably one of the most significant, most successful found footage movie, although it's not horror. But it's up there to enough to spawn a few sequels.
I guess, what is it?
Not necessarily found footage.
That whole series is kind of weird. What about Wreck? Wreck is that found footage?
I've never seen Wreck before.
Nor have I. That's why I was asking. Oh, Chronicle. Chronicle is a great one.
Yes, Chronicle is the other one.
They have a great in-universe explanation for why the cameras are still rolling and getting these crazy awesome angles too.
Yeah, and it's like what do they do? They basically, because this is a time when a lot of people are getting cell phones with cameras in it. Is it the government that basically goes in and starts pulling out all the footage out that everyone's recorded and like uploaded to, their cloud drives and whatnot?
Something, yeah.
Yeah. I can't even think of any other non-horror movie found footage movies. A couple of that we may be missing here. There's 2 creep movies that are really kind of unsettling. That's kind of where they just take place in a house and sort of like the surrounding area. A guy hires like a videographer to come in and sort of document his life, and he's basically a murderer, a creepy person who may or may not have killed people. He claims to have killed people. So it's just kind of the person who's hired to sort of like film him and talk about his life, getting sort of embroiled into his murderous ways, which was pretty neat. There's the Wreck series, like REC.
That's what I just asked you about.
Oh, in my mind, I thought you said like wreck, like a car wreck.
No,
I was picturing a poster for someone entirely different.
Can't believe
in that case,
are you gaslighting me here?
I'm gaslighting
you. What's a wreck?
I honestly, as soon as you said wreck, I was picturing like something entirely different.
Were you picturing like Crash?
Yeah, like some other movie.
David Cronenberg.
In that case, I have seen all the original Wrecks. There's 4 of them, and then there's 2 American remakes of it called Quarantine.
That's what I was thinking of, because it wasn't like Dexter's sister in one of those ones, Quarantine?
Yeah, she was in the first one, I think. She was in Quarantine.
Right.
And the Wreck series is pretty solid. There's a couple of interesting entries in there. But
is that all just like security cam footage or something? Or is it actually somebody with like a...
It's somebody with
camcorder?
A camera.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a couple different settings. There's like, I think maybe it was Wreck 3 that takes place like at a wedding. So it kind of makes sense. There's a bunch of cameras recording the wedding. Okay. And then there's like, I don't think are they zombies in the movie? They're just kind of like more like infectious monsters that people get turned into monsters anyways.
Oh, spoilers.
And then there's
speaking of which, yeah, Diary of the Dead. George A. Romero, the master himself,
Yeah,
made a found footage zombie movie.
How did that turn out?
It was okay. I mean, it was not
Long
like,
hesitation.
yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I'm a huge fan of Romero's zombie work, but like his original trilogy of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead are something really special. And his later ones, like was it Survival of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Land of the Dead? Not in that order. They were interesting ideas, but they didn't quite live up to his older stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. There's also another one that's kind of horror, but kind of not. It's Troll Hunter.
Oh, yeah. That was all like documentary style, wasn't it? Oh, yeah.
Very documentary style. And the big one that I don't think you mentioned, maybe I just wasn't paying attention to you. The big one for us is The Fourth Kind.
Oh, my God.
That I think kind of unsettled both of us to the point where I bought it on Blu-ray, but for some reason it's still sealed in its little plastic tomb on my shelf.
Oh my goodness. It's actually on my list to watch as part of my annual Halloween project here. But yeah, it's still, again, as somebody who doesn't believe that aliens have visited this planet, this movie is about alien encounters of the fourth kind. And it's incredibly unsettling. At least I hope it still is. I hope that
it's been a while since we watched it.
That unsettling feeling hasn't worn off, because that's part of the fun of the movie, is that it's super, super creepy.
There's a couple more titles I'll just go through out here, because I kind of forgot that I've seen these Chernobyl Diaries, which kind of ties into this one because I remember enjoying it. Okay. Like I think I do have a review of it up somewhere, but I mean, that's going back over a decade now. It might not be good, but the issue is back then I was into urban exploration, and to explore like Chernobyl and the areas around it would be falling into that. And Deadstream also is kind of like that too, where it's just like, this is an abandoned house and you sort of have that urban exploration sense. One of my worst movies of last year that we talked about on a previous podcast was The Deep House, where they go all underwater and it's all found footage of them filming underwater. I thought it was awful. And VHS, I just looked it up. There are 4 VHS movies. There's VHS, VHS 94, which might be, there's VHS 94, VHS Viral, and then VHS 99, as well as VHS 2. So I guess there's 5 of them actually. Well worth the watch if you have time for it.
We'll put them on the list.
Yeah. And then, it's just, this list is going down into obscurity. I don't recognize any of these films, but there are a lot of interesting found footage, a lot of, The Visit. Is The Visit found footage? It's on this list. A Shyamalan movie?
It is. Yes. Oh my goodness. You're right.
Well, and of course at the top of this particular list I'm looking at, especially in terms of found footage documentary style, is What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, of course, yes.
And another one I wanted to throw out there is a movie called Host, which I think maybe was 2020.
It sounds really familiar.
Yeah, so it's a movie that takes place from the perspective of webcams entirely, and it's kind of like a bunch of Zoom calls between friends, and a bunch of, I think they're trying to have like a sort of like a seance session, like across the internet, and weird things start happening in their apartments. And it's just, it's kind of that different perspective too. And we've seen a couple other movies that try and take place like from a computer desktop almost, right? Like you just see different webcams, they'll bring up different videos, and it's kind of a different style of found footage.
Yeah. So I guess there is, I guess aside from our personal biases, there's still a lot of area within this genre to explore and to really effectively tell stories.
Without a doubt.
If you are a filmmaker out there who wants to make a found footage film, just I guess just make a good one. I guess that's the easy,
make
right?
A good one.
Just make it good.
You have a choice when you make a movie. It's either good or it's not. Just make it good.
That's what we've been doing wrong. So you were the one who, this is kind of your baby. You found Deadstream. So how did this come into your consciousness here? How did this come into your your live stream, let's say. Which I will confess, it took me way longer than it should have to put that title together. The whole Deadstream title is the opposite of live stream. It was like halfway through the movie, and I was like, okay, I get the title now. I feel really, really stupid. It took me this long to piece that together.
Right? After you get it, you're like, why hasn't nobody else made a title like that? It's Deadstream. It's such a perfect play on words there. But to answer your question, like, this is a Shudder exclusive. Like, I think it's a Shudder original release. It just came out.
It is, yeah.
I want to say at the time of recording a couple weeks ago. And, you know, I'm a subscriber of Shudder. I love this service. There's just all sorts of interesting little films popping up on it. And when you subscribe to them, you got to check out all their Twitter accounts, and you start following other people who almost like, you make it a focus. I mean, the horror world,
yeah,
I think we've talked about it before. It's a really neat little community that's pretty inclusive, and they build up these different movies. They know there's so many different subgenres of horror that people are into, and people are really happy to talk about it. So I saw a lot of online chatter about Deadstream. I think maybe with that amount of chatter, you sort of like that, you get a sense that this is maybe a little bit elevated beyond your typical release, or like sort of straight to video on demand release.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I did not really look at any details on it. I saw the title, I saw the poster, which shows kind of like a zombified, like clawed hand holding on to one of these GoPros. You were like, all right, I'm there for it.
Yeah. So had you seen any advertising for this movie aside from on Shudder? Like, this one came out of the blue for me. Like, I had no idea this existed until you told me about it.
Honestly, yeah, I don't think I've seen any real advertising for it. I mean, aside from like a tweet from Shudder. But if you don't subscribe to them on social media, I think you're just going to hear about this movie through some word of mouth.
Right.
They don't. I don't imagine they have the budget to do any kind of major advertising campaigns. Like, you're probably not seeing commercials. I've never seen a trailer for this. But if you're in that horror community, then you probably see this on your radar, is my guess. And that's kind of.
Without getting too much into spoilers at this point, I want to say that I hope that we can contribute in some small way to that word of mouth.
Yeah.
Because, like, I know you're going to ask me what my overall impression was, and like, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. It really played to the strengths of the genre and the strengths of the assuming fairly low budget they had to work with. They got like a lot of mileage out of this, and for someone who went in with a bias against found footage films, it won me over really quickly. And this is probably one of my favorite horror movies that I've watched this Halloween season. So, definitely, like, consider this word of mouth. Check out Deadstream if you get a chance.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's just it is that mixed expectation. You're heading into it not really knowing what you're going to get into. And I've watched some of these Shudder originals. I've watched some of these ones that seem to get bolstered up by the community, and you're like, well, that wasn't really that good, or this was a little lacking there. But this one really set itself apart. I was fully invested the entire time. I was loving almost every second of it. So definitely, before we get into spoilers, check out the film if you haven't. It's really, it was a blast.
Yeah.
And with that, I guess we should get into the main discussion of this movie. Like, what are some of the elements that really worked for you in this film?
Okay, so first of all, this portrayal of the YouTuber.
Yes, definitely.
Joseph Winter, who plays Shawn. Wait, so it was directors were Joseph and Vanessa Winter. Is that husband, wife? Brother, sister?
I'm assuming so, but they could just be siblings. They directed it, they wrote it, and I think I saw them as editors of the movie. Like, this is their baby.
Yeah, but Joseph Winter, who plays Shawn, really, like, amazingly captured the spirit of some of these, like, douchebag YouTubers that I've seen on, and not to rag, like, my son watches all these YouTube channels of these idiots doing stupid stunts, and just,
it's like, all these challenges and things, right?
Yeah, the stupid, like, they so perfectly captured the essence of these kind of slimy clickbaity YouTube streamers
Yeah, like
who are
their
doing
content. Yeah,
the quote unquote content creators, and really some like really unlikable, but you can't turn. It's like almost like a car crash mentality for some of these YouTubers, right? It's like a car crash. It's like I'm disgusted and horrified by this, but I can't turn away. I'm so invested in the stupid thing he's going to do next, right?
yeah. And the movie begins with like a montage of a lot of the stupid stunts that he's done. And so you get, I want to say it's like maybe a minute or two long. And it's just highlights of his YouTube channel. And some of them are just ridiculous. Like at one point he's trying to get smuggled across the Mexican border. What was he doing? The baby in the river
Moses,
thing?
The Moses in the river.
One?
He had the Moses in the river, the abandoned baby challenge. But like, honestly, if I hadn't seen this in the context of a movie, you could have shown me this, and I would have assumed it was just an actual YouTuber. Pulling stunts.
He seemed to have the mannerisms down perfectly. And oddly enough, when I looked at reviews after watching this movie, a lot of the criticisms were against his acting and that they didn't like this character. And I thought he did a really good job. Right, that was the whole point. I thought he did a really good job of making himself unlikable. And to be perfectly fair, he's not a likable character. He's done bad things. He was canceled. He's been to court over some of the issues in the videos he's filmed, right? And I think that is a very prevalent issue. Well, maybe not prevalent, but that is an issue that takes effect. People creating this for entertainment go too far and get themselves into actual legal troubles.
It was not a coincidence they mentioned PewDiePie several times in the movie. I mean, if you've followed him at all, I've only followed him on the periphery. I never really watched his channel, but just like knowing what's going on with him, there was a very specific reason why they kept mentioning him. It was relevant in terms of like the whole, stunts going too far, being canceled, the online. You saw the whole time there's a live stream, and like you could see like the people posting their comments about things, like, and you have like it was so great, like the interface of it all. It must have gone like, they must have had so much effort put in just writing all those comments from different users.
Oh, geez, yeah.
To get like, because it was a constant stream almost on the screen when he would log into his account there. And he had like the usual, like you could have sworn you were watching like a YouTube comment section, because like there was they ran the whole gamut from like people who were like, hardcore fans, watch you do this. Other people who are just like, you can bleep this out if you want, but like just like the shit posting of this, like, you're the worst.
And
I hope you die.
Yeah.
Like
the
all
open criticism towards them, and
and then there's other people who are like, who were fans who are like holding him accountable. It's like, you said for your sponsorship you had to check out the noise if you heard it in here in the house. And so like it ran a full gambit of people, and like, oh, like when Chrissy shows up, it's like, oh yeah, she's really, keep her around, she's gonna boost your views. And they had like the live poll and everything. And all of this kind of online syntax that we, especially younger generations, have grown up with, but that you see that and you understand is like, oh, this is from your YouTube or TikTok or Twitch, right? You see all these kind of cultural markers from that online world, and they captured it maybe the best I've seen in a movie. It was pretty amazing.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, the live streaming stuff, like especially Twitch, is what I'm more familiar with, because I'm just watching people play video games, and I'm so fascinated.
Yeah, that's my exposure mostly on my side as well.
Yeah, and how big streaming and everything has become, and all these little tools that creators have. I've done a little bit of streaming myself, just to during the pandemic, streaming for friends as a way to sort of keep in touch. And you see these tools present in the movie, like elevated comments. Like there's moderators in their chat who promote comments, and he'll only respond to the ones that have like a little diamond, and they hang on to the chat a little longer than the rest of this stuff, because there's a lot of, if you've ever been into a live chat with lots of people, the chat just goes wild. Like it goes by too quickly for someone to pay attention to. So you need people to sort of pull out the choice comments. And you see people talking about signing up for the different tiers of Patreon that he must have, and looking to donate money. And I love that they're criticizing him. And I love that when things do start going down in this house, that people are calling BS on it, saying this is all staged. These are all effects. And there's a certain meta commentary to that where, these are people in like these ghoul suits, And maybe at the end of the movie, it will be staged for us, the viewer of this movie. It's just,
Yeah.
it was really fascinating.
Part of the narrative tension for me was like going through was like, is at some point this going to be revealed to have been like a whole stunt where he hired performers to do this, and that was going to, and then it kind of backfired, and then there's a real spirit that got mad at this. But at the end of the movie, is like, it could still, theoretically, it could have all been staged, right? Like nothing that they did couldn't have been done on a shoestring budget, which this movie had, including chopping off certain appendages.
Ooh. Yeah.
things they escalate really quickly.
The effects in the movie are really, really fun. And I think, just to rewind a little bit, this is really like a horror comedy. There's a lot of funny elements. And I think a part of that is because Shawn, like this character, has to make his stream entertaining. And he obviously comes from like a bit of an extreme stunt background, and he knows how to keep people entertained. And I think when they throw up the viewer count, it's at one point millions of people are watching this thing. And it harkens back to that comment you made before where, why are people continuing to film these horrible things? And he's in like this like entertainer, content creator mode, where it's just like his reactions will be exaggerated for the benefit of entertainment in the stream. And I love his getup where the main camera is basically mounted onto his body. Like there's an arm coming over his shoulder. He's not holding anything except maybe his iPad to sort of like look at comments. But when things need to go down, he has both hands available, and the GoPros are mounted on his body so he can continue to stream. I really love that handling of the,
it was perfect because it's taking advantage of like modern technology we have, and it's not a stretch. That's like, obviously they must have just done that setup, right? It's like, that's an easy setup to do. Like the GoPro cameras have come advanced so far, and like they were setting them up around the house. So you have the ones mounted to him, then you have the ones mounted around the house that he can just pull up on his iPad there. And then eventually you have like the spear cam and everything.
Well, that's the other thing. So when Chrissy comes around, he gives her a camera, puts a camera on her head, and you see him setting it up in the software. He calls it Chrissy Cam. And then he makes a spear later on, and he literally takes the time to name the camera so you know what you're looking at. And then the beef cam too, because he's in his car at one point with a piece of like beef jerky. He mounts a camera to it and sticks it out the window and is like, oh, this is beef cam. I mean, he's under assault and he spends time naming this thing. It's hilarious.
The whole persona, the whole YouTube persona, they got down to a T. And I also wanted to highlight what you had said about his over-exaggerated reactions when he was like running and screaming and hiding in the closet.
Yeah.
Like partially that was like the character being scared, but partially like you're saying, like he's putting on, it's performative, right?
Yeah.
He's exaggerating how like the level of fear, and he's screaming louder than he probably would have if he knew he wasn't being watched, to generate, because he's putting on that persona, he's putting on that character for his viewers, which I think a lot of streamers and YouTubers will do, right? Like their reactions are not commensurate or not equal to what's happening to them on screen. They have to like play it up to make it seem more dramatic, and I think the character does that. Super annoying. Like after a while, like that scream, his like higher pitched scream there was like super annoying, but like annoying in it was appropriate for the context of the character in that world, so it didn't get annoying even though it was annoying. It's a weird kind of dichotomy or balance. But it was perfect, because so many times I was like, this character is just playing this up to make it seem like he's in more danger than he was, especially at the beginning when nothing really paranormal was happening and he was just like jumping around and stuff. It was like no character is that scary. Even his whole shtick in universe was like, here's a list of things, like all his YouTube videos were in his world were like, here's all the list of things like I'm really scared of, and so I'm gonna go and confront my fears by doing this stuff, and like really stupid stuff like being chased by the cops. So I think at one of his videos, like him throwing eggs at police to get them to chase him, and then the one that we don't actually see, but the one that got him into huge trouble was when he like hired a homeless person to fight, and it ended up this guy went to end up in the hospital. Did he actually die? I think.
I don't think the movie's really clear on it, but he basically, I think he was in legal issue for assault, essentially. Like he put this guy in the hospital at the very least.
And then the whole being having himself smuggled across the border was called out as being racially insensitive for people who like actual refugees coming across the U.S. border who like actually need help. And so like to be fair, like that didn't even occur to me. So like when they pointed that out later, it's like, of course that's racially insensitive. Of course that's hugely, insensitive to people's plight. But I like applaud the movie for like calling this stuff out, right? Because like all these stunts, honestly, there are YouTubers out there. You could see them doing very similar, if not identical things.
They're doing ethically ambiguous things, right?
Yes, ethically ambiguous.
And
I
like that too, where they make the comment like he has to do an apology video, and we are so used to seeing apology videos of these
celebrities,
content creators and celebrities, and he does one, and in a moment of fear and anxiety and whatnot, he basically says, "Yeah, I still don't think I did anything wrong, but they made me do that apology video." And then again later on, he's just like, "Oh, like I do feel bad that I made other people feel bad." It's just like he does have a couple moments of not full redemption, but to make him less hateable, I guess.
Surprising amounts of character growth and development. Where like, he's coming to terms. He's like facing his own potential death once all these demons start attacking him. And like at first, it's like, no, I didn't care. I wasn't sorry. I didn't think I did anything wrong. And then later on, he's like, when he's forced to like, when you're facing your own demise and you're looking back in your life and you're faced to reckon with your legacy. And he's like, yeah, you know what? He does a very bad apology, but he goes back and he does start to self-reflect on some of the questionable choices he made. And is like, you know what? I shouldn't have paid that homeless person to fight with me. Even though it was funny, but for the wrong reasons. So he's like, it's very true to life where like nobody changes in an instant, right? It's a series of smaller epiphanies that lead to gradual change over time. So he's making some small personal steps in progress, but he's not a completely different person at the same time, right? So I thought it was very like relatable and true to life. So it gave the character, it made the character feel like a real person, which helped keep you in that world, right?
Without a doubt. That's well said. Going back to this homeless person in this video, they do call him like a bum, and there's like a bum fight in this movie. And this harkens back to nearly 20 years ago, kind of like before YouTube, where we endured the Stone Age of online video and content creation with actual, like I think it was a series called Bum Fights, right? I don't know if you remember this.
Oh, yeah, I do.
And I'm not sure how this started. I don't know if somebody was just got a camera, and like cameras were not necessarily built into cell phones back then. People were just so happy to catch two homeless people fighting. And I don't know exactly, I should have did a little research on this, but it became a whole series, and everyone is like, this is not right. We should not be recording this stuff. We should not be encouraging these people to fight.
I think
and for our entertainment,
they would actually like pay them so the winner would get something.
Right.
Yeah. So there still is a lot of questionable content put out there for amusement. Right.
And that's going back 20 years. And I think in this movie, I don't know if it was a direct reference to those old videos, because this is kind of aging ourselves here, but it was so relevant back then. And I think in this movie, Shawn mentions he did pay this guy to fight him, right? It's just like he never paid him. Yeah, it's like he never learned the lesson from all that stuff 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It's like the whole thing, like the cycle repeating itself, right? It's like that lack of self-reflection and self-reflexivity, I think, is a prevalent theme that they were getting at. There's a lot of really kind of pointed commentary in this movie about that social media / streaming / YouTube / Twitch / whatever it is, whatever platform kind of mentality and community, and how that can lead to kind of exploitative videos. It can lead to, obviously spreading of biases and discrimination, even unknowingly or unwittingly, but just through a culture of kind of thoughtlessness, or a culture of putting everything, not considering anything except how many views or clicks that you think that this stunt or this video is going to get you. So people are, part of it is a issue with the system where people are incentivized to act badly, because on the internet, whether you are getting validation for good behavior or bad behavior, in the end, online, it amounts to the same thing in terms of money. So you're incentivized. Yeah. So you're incentivized to do whatever it takes to get those clicks. And it's easier to destroy than it is to create. It's easier to generate clicks out of hate than out of love. And unfortunately, I think we're still in the midst of figuring out how to incentivize one side over the other. Unfortunately, I think right now the wrong side is incentivized.
And it's something that has been with us for quite a while, like all the way back for me in the reality, and I say reality with air quotes here, with Survivor, right? Back in the late 90s when that debuted. It's
the whole genre of reality TV was, I think, a precursor to all this, right?
Right. And then Big Brother shortly after that. And as more of these seasons came out, people on the show became familiar with creating that like online persona where that's not really who they are, but they know if they want to go on the show and get their 15 minutes of fame, they're going to have to act a certain way and do certain things on these shows. And then it just eats itself, because the producers are like, well, this kind of drama is going to generate more viewers. And so if you guys could just slightly encourage each other to do this stuff, it just cycles up into caricatures on these shows 20 years later.
Well, with Survivor, I think the curtain really dropped when they had that season called Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it became like, just for me, that was a season where it became, even in like the branding, it became super clear. It's like, you're labeling people and casting them for roles. You're not just putting a bunch of random people, you're casting people for roles. And I think it was something that we were kind of aware of, but it was like, it was in the background. It's like, you didn't pull the curtain back to see all the machinery pulling the strings and everything. But it's like, of course, people are going to be cast into certain roles, and they're going to be encouraged or incentivized to behave in a certain way, to be a hero or be a villain, or to be the schemer, or to be the honorable leader, or whatever the role you're cast as. And like, they're going to either incentivize you in the show, whether it's like producers talking to you, or like driving those conversations with other cast members, or through the edits where they're going to edit you to be a certain way. And there's going to be biases in editing as well, right? But I think, the curtain at some point, for me, really, when they started like the heroes versus villains, and it was just like, you're saying like the quiet part loud, and it's like, it was kind of like, now in Survivor, especially with the advent of social media, I'm following a bunch of people from Survivor shows on Twitter, on social media, and like this whole persona, it goes on beyond the show now, right? Where they're either keeping that persona going, or they're pushing back against that persona, and it's like, oh, I'm not who I was on that show. And it's like there's a back and forth. It's really interesting kind of dialogue going on about there's issues of identity and issues of authenticity, all kinds of interesting questions going on. Coming to a head in Deadstream as well, in a horror comedy. There's a lot going on beneath the surface of this movie, which I think helped to elevate it beyond the usual kind of horror fare. Without
a doubt. I don't want to fully change gears on here, because that's a really, really well said commentary on our current society here. And movies do reflect.
Brian, we live in a society.
Right. And I just want to talk about, like you mentioned, like it goes beyond the surface level, but let's talk about the surface level here for a second.
Let's do it.
The special effects in this movie.
Yes.
Yay or nay?
Man, I was down for it. I say this is probably some of the highest praise I can give another horror movie, but I got really strong Evil Dead vibes from
Without a doubt,
Deadstream, in terms of how they had not just how the demons appeared, but how like Shawn had to physically fight them, and he was like punching them in the face, stabbing them with knives. I was like, I didn't say anything because I wanted to get your reaction here. I was like, did you get the Evil Dead vibes coming off of these demons?
Without a doubt. It's just like they were kind of gooey.
Yeah.
And they were like kind of, their body movements were exaggerated, like everything it felt like a
Very
very direct
Deadite-esque.
homage to it. Yeah, very Deadites-esque. And I love every second of it. I love that they punch demons. That
Yeah,
he
it's
shoots
great.
a demon with like a potato gun and puts a hole in him. It's just like, it may seem silly, and I can understand people seeing that and be like, this is ridiculous. But no, I love the physicality that demons are in our world. They're not invincible creatures. I mean, that guy's going to get back up. Those demons, I mean, they'll just kind of regenerate and do their thing. But man, I love that they are a presence, and I love the effects. Like, they are people dressed up. They are real objects in this house. They're not CGI monstrosities. They are interacting with the environment perfectly.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that they're mischievous too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just great.
One of the coolest scenes in the movie was when he was walking down the hall and he couldn't see anything in front of him. But on the camera, the GoPro he had mounted, he was looking at his iPad, and there was like the ghost of the woman Mildred who had hung herself there. And on the camera, you could see it, but he couldn't see anything. And people on the live stream were like, no, just sneak past her, get out of the house now.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'm going to sneak past her. And he's sneaking past her. He's like, there's nothing there for him. It's just on the camera. Then all of a sudden it jumps down, materializes. And all of a sudden there's a real life demon on his back, like punching him and biting him and stuff. And he's like having to punch her in the face to escape.
Oh, that was
total
a
Evil
brutal
Dead
scene.
vibes. But like it was a really neat way to kind of build up that tension of having like something's on the camera, but I can't see it in real life. I'm just going to sneak past it. It's like, no, it got you.
Yeah. Because I was like, basically, aside from jumping out a window, because everything was kind of boarded up, he didn't have many options to escape. And it's just like, yeah, maybe just make a break for it, just run. And that scene was brutal. He's getting bitten in the neck. And then he takes like a shattered piece of wood and drives it through. Or was that a slightly different scene? Because there's Chrissy who shows up and she claims to be like a viewer, like a fan of the show. And she basically says, I'm here because you kind of accidentally revealed where this place is. And they made it clear, like it was an hour drive down a dirt road to get to this place.
An hour
not
drive
easy to
down
find.
somewhere, and then another 20 minutes, then another driveway. And that was, by the way, Chrissy is played by Melanie Stone. I'm going to give her a shout out because she did an amazing job as well.
And you talk about like someone who you as an audience member, you're not entirely sure is she an actual fan? And he even questions it, like, were you here before? Like, how did you find this place? How did you get in? Because he's locked all the doors, so he can't get out. But she was in there, and of course, she tries playing tricks on him too. He puts the camera on her head, and he's having her walk directly behind him,
Chrissy
so he
cam.
can see in front and behind him, and she'll just disappear. And it's just like she is messing with him, and I really like that dynamic. And of course, it turns out that Chrissy is the spirit of Mildred, who is like the main haunt of this house, right?
Yeah, it's revealed that she was like she was looking for love, I guess, and she couldn't find it. And she finally found someone to love her, and he died, and so she killed herself a couple of days after that. But she was like writing poetry, and he was a publisher. So that plays in later to the story where he like comes to an understanding. Is like, oh, she just wants to build. She's trying to build an audience. Only she's like trying to build an audience out of souls.
Yeah.
Before I forget my whole Evil Dead analogy, when I started looking at this movie through the lens of Evil Dead, then I realized like the character fit perfectly. It was like an Ash Williams style character, because like Ash Williams, the character, character of Evil Dead, he was the coward, right? He was like he was the whiny, annoying coward who kept getting put upon to save the world. And I was like, this guy is totally like if Ash Williams was a live streamer, right?
It's true. Because Ash Williams, like himself, he's not like a great person, right? Like he's kind of a jerk. He's not super kind to
selfish,
people.
Yeah.
He's selfish, and he's a coward. 100%. Very, very much inspired by that.
But yeah, that actor there, Melanie Stone, she did an amazing job of like, Chrissy was like kind of like cute and endearing, but then all of a sudden it's like really questionable. It's like, well, what is she doing here? Who is this? And then like when it's revealed that she's the demon, and she has a great time playing up as a demon and taunting him and attacking him, all kinds of stuff. It's fantastic.
It really is. It really is good. And that whole thing where he basically pieces it together that she's essentially forcing people to read her poetry, like consume her content, and then she kind of like enslaves them as like their souls. Like she takes their souls in that way. And I mean, that's kind of what he's trying to do. He's trying to get as many viewers as possible, and he's trying to get people to subscribe to his content, and he's trying to keep you there at all times.
Yeah, what does he say at the end when he figures it out? He's going to go back in because one of the things he did was he took the spark plugs out of his car and threw them away, so he forced himself that he couldn't run away. Then he's attacked by another demon. And then he's like, okay, I got to go back in the house and demonetize this bitch.
Yeah.
He's like, what I'm going to do is like, he puts it, it's interesting because he puts it in his perspective. It's like, oh, she wants to build an audience. Like, no, I'm going to steal her audience then.
Yeah.
And like one of the people online, because there's this one plaque that's hanging up and they're like this weird kind of demon-esque kind of hand with an eye in the middle. And then one of his viewers actually figures out is like, oh, actually my grandmother said that this is actually like she made this and put it there. She used to live there. It's like a sign to ward off evil. And he accidentally, being a jerk, finds this thing and just smashes it when he finds it because he thinks it looks evil, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks evil. And that is in the safe room because previous, like he shows some video of other paranormal investigators in this house, and they've recorded events in every single room except this one bedroom upstairs, which does happen to have that thing in the closet. When he destroys it, that no longer becomes a safe room for him to be in.
Doesn't happen to have it. The reason that was a safe room was because of that symbol that they put on. But he finds in Mildred's journal that symbol. It was like some satanic ritual with the hand with like the one finger pointed down, a bunch of Latin, and then somebody, and he's like, yeah, turn to the power of the internet. There's a lot of good people out there. And it's like somebody translates the Latin for him so he can essentially cast this spell and kind of take over her demonic followers.
And I love that, like, there's this video of this old lady who's sort of explaining everything, but she's talking quite slowly. And she's just recording, like her granddaughter's like recording her, and he puts her on like 2x speed. It's just like, he's just like, I don't have time to watch this whole video. Just expedite that whole thing and figure out what she's trying to tell us here.
Yeah, there were some nice little kind of points of humor that could only be told with that specific kind of technology, right? Like that, the fast forwarding through the grandmother's long explanation. There's a few other things as well. It was really interesting how, in order to fight the bad guy, he put it through. Everything was kind of put through his perspective and his lens, and he saw her as, this is like an adversary streamer. So it's like, I'm going to demonetize her and steal her followers, and that's how he words it. He's putting everything in his kind of mental framework, and it works. Sort of.
Does it? That's the thing. Does it work? Because she is dragged to hell, basically. What he goes through, and Ben has to cut his finger. He needs the flesh sacrifice, so he cuts his finger off.
It needs a sacrifice of flesh for the spell to work.
And then all the other ghosts come through, including the corner man, which we haven't mentioned. He was just like, he was great. The child there with the thing coming out of him, the
Quado there coming out
of his side, the Quado, it's just like, that was super creepy.
And that weird cat thing in the forest that he saw, like the cat with the human face. Super creepy. But that's the thing. Were they coming to finish him off, or were they coming because he had essentially taken control of their souls? That was the whole point of the spell. Were they just coming to serve their master? But then the movie goes blank, but it's a perfect like Evil Dead style ending as well, where it's like the protagonist, it seems like he is completely screwed by the end, right?
So what do you think happened to him? Do you think he's in control of these ghosts, or do you think he's succumbed to them? Like, what do you think has happened to our YouTube guy?
Well, I don't want to spoil things in case I get called on to write Deadstream 2.
That's a good point. It might be a sequel.
I don't want to throw out these ideas for free, Brian. They could be out there listening to our podcasts right now. Joseph.
There are a few people who do listen to the podcast, so you're right.
Joseph and Vanessa Winter could listen to this podcast and say, hey, these are intelligent individuals with great insight into our work. Maybe we could tap them to help us write the sequel. It could happen, Brian. This could be, I sense a collaboration coming on.
There's only one request I have for the sequel, and it's more fingernails inside noses.
Yeah, that was really freaky. The worst part was when like he runs downstairs and his nose is bleeding and he reaches up inside his nose and he pulls out the fingernail that had broken off. But again, like the Evil Dead style, like why stick your finger up somebody's nose? Or like when he was in the bathtub and the demon comes out. And it's like trying to pull him like under to drown him. And then what does he do? He injects it with holy water. And he's like, yeah, holy garlic may not work, but holy water always. And the thing just like bursts like pus, gross pus all over his face. And he just like stops and just like, is a very like human kind of reaction, right?
I really look forward to whatever these two do next. And I have to check out VHS 99. I think that comes out shortly on Shudder again. If not on Shudder, somewhere where we're going to watch it. And yeah, I mean, what an innovate? Can I say it's an innovation on the found footage movie? Like, it's certainly
absolutely
they did something good
like
with it.
The whole thing, where like the whole UX that they had designed, with all like the multiple cams and like him switching between different shots, and like the
felt very realistic and intuitive.
Yeah, like I don't think I've seen a found footage movie that really captured that kind of like the streaming side of things, right? It's like that was innovative. I think there's some other ones out there, some lower budget stuff that we haven't seen, but I think Deadstream is the first kind of quote unquote big horror movie that's used the found footage conceit in the context rather of streamers and YouTubers. And it's like when you hear that idea, you go, it's one of those ideas that's so obviously brilliant. You go, of course, this is perfect for the found footage genre, right? This is a perfect way to implement found footage and to make it make sense in universe. There's probably a whole community of writers out there who are like crumpling up their scripts and throwing them in the garbage. It's like, these guys beat me to it.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Like the first camera he sets up is outside, pointed at the house, and he describes to his viewers like, yeah, this is motion activated. If it catches motion, it'll switch there. And as he's jumping out the second story window, it picks up his motion of jumping out, and our stream moves over to that camera view, right? And it's just like, oh, now we have a bit of an action shot, or at least just him falling out of the house. And then it can cut back to his actual point of view camera that's on him.
Yeah, was that tech in his like little wristwatch there thing where he flicked his wrist and it switched cameras? Is that like a real thing? I don't know.
You know what? If it's not a real thing, then it's probably something that can be done. Like, I don't doubt any of that stuff, that there's all these elements for control and something wrist. I mean, we have smartwatches that do amazing things. Like, who's to say there's not an app on a device like that?
Yeah, there must be. Like, I assume that all the functionality, like there's no functionality in any of the camera work that couldn't be done by a bunch of people with a couple $100 to buy some GoPros, right? Like, there was nothing.
Yeah. Like, it's probably a pricey setup for sure, but at least you have the basis that this guy is an established YouTuber, and he's probably making lots of money, and he would have some cash to invest in the equipment. And especially later on, his iPad gets destroyed, and he doesn't know if he's streaming or not. And when he does go back in the house, in his backpack, there's a backup for his iPad, and he can pick it up again. Well, it's like, oh, of course they would have backups. His new sponsor is the
in-universe equivalent of like the Monster energy drink, right? So like he's got some cash flow coming in.
Yeah. Just really, really neat stuff. So if you don't have anything else to say, I think we could probably get into some ratings on this.
What's that supposed to mean? Yeah. Are you done talking, Nathan?
No,
Can you wrap it up? Do you have like this, like a clip of the Emmy music playing over me just to hurry me off stage?
The long hook to pull you off stage. I don't want to cut you short if there's anything else to add. I didn't really have any other notes to add myself. I think we covered a lot of stuff. Like, this movie was short. It's 87 minutes, and I think that's a really great length for a horror movie like this. Like,
perfect.
You mentioned earlier that his laugh was maybe getting a little too much, right?
Screaming,
it's just like if you're annoyed by these characters, they're not around for a long time, right? Like, this is 90 minutes of your time here. It's not too excessive, I think. So, yeah, what's your we use the 5-star rating system found on Letterboxd, which gives possibility for that special heart, like at the end, if applicable. Out of 5 stars, where do you land on Deadstream?
So I think currently I have it at 4 stars, 4 stars out of 5.
Yeah.
Thought it was really, really good. Really overcame my initial bias my bias against found footage movies.
Yeah.
It won me over. This one might earn the heart after a while, or the like. just because like this is one I think I'm gonna find myself going back to this one.
That's the big thing, right?
Year after year for like this. I have a feeling this is gonna make it into my regular Halloween movie rotation. I can't.
And your
wait.
Halloween's going to be packed.
It already is
There's
packed.
a lot of
I can't even
right?
get through my regular rotation and watch new movies. It's a tough balance. How about you, Brian? Where did you land on this?
I landed with the same star rating, 4 stars. It's one of those things where I always feel like I have to justify or just like put up that disclaimer of like, my ratings don't mean anything sometimes, right? Like, I'll say it again. It's like, this could have been 4.5 stars. It probably will be on future watches. And that's the big thing for me. If there was a checkbox on Letterboxd saying, I'm going to watch this again, it gets that checkbox right away. And I think that's an important factor because...
Can we copyright that idea so that Letterboxd doesn't steal it without giving us proper revenue? So when we see that feature pop up next month, we know we're going to contact their lawyers, their Letterboxd. We're on to you.
Yeah, I'd just be happy if they got it from this episode, and that means somebody's out there listening to us. But yeah, I mean, I judge a lot of these movies based on if I'm going to come back. And I think we mentioned before recording that I rate movies 4 or 5 stars sometimes, and I have no desire to watch them again. Like, they're great movies. This is a great movie that I'm going to come back to. And I hope it gets a nice physical media release. I know Shudder is not... they're not adverse to giving those DVD, Blu-ray, 4K releases every so often. I'd really like to see a non-streaming quality version of this movie in the near future. It was just really stellar. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great blend of horror and comedy. There were some jump scares in there. It's like, at this point, it's like I can't imagine a jump scare getting to me, and then the movie comes along like this, and of course, it gets me several times where I'm, on the edge of my seats, or and the build-up's building up and like, oh, it's a fake out. And then they get me on the next one. Then like the next scene, I'm laughing at this ridiculous over the top demon fight, or Shawn acting like a total coward, or jumping out a 2-story window and then trying to disinfect the cut by putting like some of this hand sanitizer on a toothpick.
He puts hand sanitizer. Was it a toothpick or a Q-tip?
Q-tip. Q-tip.
Like, the comments are on screen at that time too, and they're like, "Don't do it, don't do it." And he barely dabs the wound like this. The Q-tip is so small compared to the gash in his leg, and it's just like does nothing. But he's in complete agony over it. And then duct tape. Duct tape solves all life issues.
He was right. Duct tape worked for everything.
It really did. It's a good thing he had that. It was like on his belt loop, like just carried it along with him. This movie, we like to go around the web a little bit. On Rotten Tomatoes for the ratings, this is at a 92% critic rating.
Nice.
Which seems pretty high, especially for a horror film. IMDb has this at a 6.7 out of 10. And Letterboxd average is 3.4, which, again, I think is fairly
solid.
Decent for a horror film. Granted, it's only been out for a couple weeks, and these ratings could change, but I think this is a solid film. And I'm also pretty excited that I think we're going to get this episode out before Halloween. This is another one of our quick turnaround recordings here. So we're just going to stay a little bit relevant for the spooky season.
Yeah, we proved with the Scream episode that we have it within us to actually turn out these episodes within a couple days. So it's purely by a lack of willpower on our part that there's such a delay between recording and release typically. So you can check. It's not that we don't care. It's that we're lazy.
We're pretty much, yeah. I can't refute any of those statements.
But no, I think final thoughts. I would highly recommend this movie to anybody who is a fan of horror comedy. Obviously, I mentioned Evil Dead, but if you like stuff like Shaun of the Dead, I think you'll enjoy this movie as well. It's got a really good blend where it's not a lot of gore, so I think you could get, some younger family members watching this without too much. How young depends on your own personal experience. But overall, highly recommend the movie. Definitely check it out when you get a chance. I'm going to be telling everybody and their mother to take a look at this, and I wish nothing but success for this pair, this Joseph and Vanessa Winter.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Reel Film Chronicles podcast. Thank you for listening and hanging out with us today. We really appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us for the next episode. We can be found around the internet and social media, with our home base being reelfilmchronicles.com, which will have all the links you need to follow and keep in touch with us. Until next time, take care of yourself and others, and keep your film journey going.